Alright, so now we're going to move on to British socialism. This is probably the shortest lesson on the socialist philosophers that we have, and it's of Beatrice Webb, and the form of socialism we're discussing in particular today is Fabian Socialism. So it's based around the Fabian Society. And to those of you who do not know what the Fabian Society is, do not worry, because we will get into it in this lesson. So, Beatrice Webb lived between 1858, so that's just for the Reform Act of 1867, done by Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, and she died in 1943. So, in the midst of the Second World War, I believe a year after the tide turned, after Operation Barbarossa failed. So, let's get into it. Beatrice Webb and the overthrow of the capitalist state. Beatrice Webb was a democratic socialist who advocated the belief that the capitalist state would inevitably give way to the socialist state via the historical dialectic. We've already talked about what that is, so I won't get into it at the moment. She believed that capitalism forced the proletariat into poverty and forced them into supposedly degenerate mindsets, which were selfish and competitive. She believed that these people had been corrupted by the capitalist state. So once again, you can see the ideas of Jean-Jacques Rousseau here with the idea that with the noble savage, and he is being corrupted by society around him, and it's clearly an optimistic view of human nature, and one that rejects the ideals of capitalism, which encourage people to be more competitive, selfish, and atomistic. She believed that the paternal attitude of the upper class, nor philanthropy, could alleviate the suffering of the proletariat. So paternalism, the idea that the people in classes higher than your own, so with the working class, that would be like the upper class and middle class, they have a paternal attitude to you, so they treat you like a son, and they essentially are supposed to look after the lower orders in society. Obviously, this would spin on the ideas of deference in the working class as a result. And philanthropy essentially just means like when a rich person puts loads of money into social aid things, like Elon Musk recently donated, I believe, $6 billion to ending world hunger to the UN. Let's see if they do it. Webb instead believed that the suffering of the proletariat could be alleviated by trade unionism and state intervention in the economy. Finally, Webb believed that effective reform occurs gradually and not from revolution. So you can see like the British aspect of socialism coming into that, and it's clearly a British strain, because this idea of gradual reform over time to a particular goal is extremely British. Obviously, because it's the foundation of our constitution, it's an organic constitution. The most important documents date back to 1215 with Magna Carta, and then you can see it in like the 1689 Bill of Rights, or the 1701 Act of Settlement, 1707 Act of Union, 1801 Act of Union, and obviously the Parliament Acts of 1914, 1918, and the three Great Reform Acts. But anyway, we've got onto a bit of a tangent there. Webb and the Fabian Society. That's the symbol of the Fabian Society to the left, and it is a wolf in sheep's clothing, in case you couldn't tell, obviously holding up the flag of the Fabian Society. Beatrice Webb and her husband, Sidney Webb, were active members of the Fabian Society. The Fabian Society was an organisation devoted to evolutionary socialism through reforms passed within Westminster. Webb encouraged the Fabian Society to align itself with the Labour Party, which was emerging in the early 1900s, led by Keir Hardie. And she was involved in drafting Clause 4 of the Labour Party's 1918 constitution, which established the redistribution of property as a goal of the Labour Party, and this would remain one of the integral facets of the Labour Party constitution until Tony Blair removed it in his new Labour Party. Obviously, it was different from old Labour. So she strongly supported the idea of common ownership of the British economy, and she hoped the Labour Party would be instrumental to bringing about evolutionary socialism through Westminster. Webb and her legacy on British left-wing politics. I just put a picture of Clement Attlee and Nye Bevans there, because her contributions were very evident through their works. So, from 1905 to 1909, Beatrice Webb served on the Royal Commission which examined the British government's approach to poverty. She published the Minority Report, which stated that the state should ensure, and I quote, a sufficient nourishment and training when young, a living wage when able-bodied, treatment when sick, and modest but secure livelihood when disabled or aged. This report preceded the infamous Beveridge Report of 1942, which would dictate policy of the 1945 Labour government led by Clement Attlee. It should be noted that her ideas influenced the emergence of the British welfare state, and I hope that's self-evident if you have a look at British history. So obviously the establishment of the NHS, public schooling, the construction of council housing, I believe, what was it, the Homes for Heroes pitch, but again, that may be from the Liberal government if I remember correctly. But anyway, that about sums it up for Beatrice Webb and her Fabian Socialism. Thank you.